Good afternoon, everybody. This is the reading of the President's video. Today, we are going to read about Mr. Nixon. Richard Milhouse Nixon, born January 9th, 1913, in Yorba Linda, California, passed away April 22nd, 1994, in New York City, New York. He was called Dick or Tricky Dick. He was a Quaker. He attended Whittier College in 1934. Graduated Duke University Law School in 1937. He was a lawyer. During World War II, Mr. Nixon enlisted as a lieutenant junior grade in U.S. Navy in June 1942. Later rose to lieutenant commander before being discharged in March of 1946. His father was Francis or Frank Anthony Nixon. His mother was Hannah Milhouse Nixon. His wife was Pat Ryan Nixon. Given name was Thelma Catherine Pat Ryan Nixon. Interesting. Married in 1940. They have two daughters, Patricia and Julie, who I believe are still alive. Mr. Nixon served as a U.S. representative for 3 years, U.S. Senator for 2 years, Vice President under Eisenhower for 7 years, looks like. Let's see, 51 minus 2. 51, no, I'm sorry, 10 minus 2. Yeah, 8 years. 8 years almost. Unsuccessful bid for presidency in 1960, lost to JFK. Unsuccessful bid for governor of California, lost to Pat Brown. But he served 2 terms, January 20th, 1969 to August 9th, 1974. As a Republican, he resigned from office. His first vice president was Spiro T. Agnew, who resigned. We know that. And later, Gerald R. Ford. In the election of 1968, Mr. Nixon got 301 electoral votes. Hubert Humphrey got 191 electoral votes, and George Wallace got 46. Ouch. In the popular vote, Mr. Nixon got 31,785,480. Mr. Humphrey got 31,275,166. And Mr. Wallace got only 9,906,473. So pretty close between Mr. Nixon and Humphrey in the popular vote there in 1968. For 1972, the electoral vote, Mr. Nixon got 520. George McGovern got 17. Ouch. John Hospers, 1 electoral vote. Ouch. Wow. Total loss for Hospers. In the popular vote, Mr. Nixon got 47,165,234. McGovern got 29,168,110. And Mr. Hospers got 2,000. Not 2 million, 2,691. Ouch. Ouch. For Mr. Richard Nixon's cabinet, Secretary of State was William P. Rogers, followed by Mr. Kissinger, Henry Kissinger, we know about him. Secretary of the Treasury was David M. Kennedy, followed by John Connally, kind of heard of him, followed by George Shultz. Secretary of Defense, Melvin Laird, followed by Elliot Richardson, followed by James R. Schlesinger, I hope I said that right. Attorney General John Mitchell, we've heard of him, followed by Richard K. Kleindienst, followed by Elliot Richardson, followed by William Saxby. Postmaster, and that was Attorney General. Attorney General, 4 Attorney Generals in 8 years. Postmaster General, Winton Blount, would cease being a cabinet-level post. Interesting. Cool. So Postmaster General is no longer in the cabinet. Secretary of the Interior, Walter J. Hickel, followed by Roger C.B. Morton. For Secretary of Agriculture, Clifford Hardin, followed by Earl L. Butz, B-U-T-Z. Secretary of Commerce, Morris Staines, we've heard of him through all the President's Men. Secretary of Commerce, Maurice Stance, followed by Peter J. Peterson, followed by Frederick B. Dent. Secretary of Labor was George P. Schultz, followed by James Hodgson, followed by Peter J. Brennan. Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, or Hugh, Robert H. Finch, followed by Elliot L. Richardson, followed by Caspar Weinberger. Secretary of HUD, George Romney. I wonder if he's related to Mitt Romney. Followed by James T. Lyon. Secretary of Transportation, John A. Volk. Followed by Cloud S. Brinegar. Claude. Supreme Court appointments include Warren Burger, Chief Justice, Henry Blackmun, followed by Lewis F. Powell Jr., followed by William Rehnquist, Chief Justice in 86. Wow, we've heard of William Rehnquist. Sorry. All right, U.S. population in 1969, 203,302,031. National debt in 74, 492 billion, B, 665 million. Straight. Even, that's the word. So 492 billion, 665 million even. Interesting. Did we know Richard Nixon is a distant cousin to both William Taft and Herbert Hoover? I think we read that earlier. Nixon was the first president to visit China. Richard Nixon was the first president to resign from office. Woodstock, August 15th through 1869. Thousands drove or hitched their way to upstate New York near the small town of Bethel in mid-August 69 to listen to music performances by popular rock bands such as Carlos Santana, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Joe Cocker, Fleetwood Mac, and Jimi Hendrix. Janis Joplin, I think, was there too. Many in the audience also imbibed in the drugs and free love that abounded. Apollo program. Plans for the Apollo spacecraft to reach the moon seemed out of reach when on January 27, 1967, Apollo 1 crew members were killed in a fire in their Saturn V's as their Saturn V sat on the launch pad. Months of reviewing plans, making changes, and altering designs resulted in the reworked and safer spacecraft that debuted in October 68. 2 months later, Apollo 8 showed everyone a picture never before seen. Earth from space. Once Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 flew successful round-trip missions to the moon, Americans became blasé about the operation, only to be reminded of space travel's dangers when Apollo 13 nearly became lost in space, and April 7, 1970, when the oxygen tank exploded on the service module. The world put aside its differences and prayed for the safe return of the crew. 4 more missions were successfully completed, and the final footprints were left on the moon in December 1972. The United States would now turn its attention to other space endeavors. Vietnam protests. The early 70s was a period of protests, sometimes violent, occurring across the United States. Dissenters against the Vietnam War marched, and college students staged sit-in strikes. It even set fire to campus buildings to show their displeasure with America's continued involvement in the war. The most famous incident on the campus was May 4th, 1970, in Kent State University in Ohio, when 4 students died after being shot by National Guardsmen. Terrible. Improved U.S.-China relations. In April 1971, an unexpected invitation by the Chinese for the American ping pong team to come and that was featured in Forrest Gump. Ping pong team to come and play in China led to a warming between the two nations, and later the visit was reciprocated. Then in February 1972, President and Mrs. Nixon visited the communist nation. They visited the typical tourist sites, including the Forbidden City, the Great Wall of China. While her husband was participating in diplomatic talks, Pat Nixon visited schools, hospitals, and factories. At the end of the trip, the two nations issued a joint announcement, Shanghai Communique, asserting that Taiwan was part of China. Nixon then returned to the United States from what he called the week that changed the world. Equal Rights Amendment, ERA. March 22, 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment passed Congress and was sent to the states for ratification. The amendment stated equality of rights under the law should not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. It did not win ratification by the deadline in 1979, so an extension was granted in 1982. But it too was not met. Opponents argued that such an amendment would eliminate single-sex schools, restrooms, sports, organizations, etc. Proponents insisted that they were merely scare tactics to keep a needed amendment ensuring equal rights for all, regardless of gender, from being ratified. And that is the end of Richard Nixon. I'll see you guys later.